Maya Thompson had learned to make herself small. Not physically small, but the kind of small that lets you slip through a room without anyone noticing you were there. At 22 years old, she'd perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight. Every morning, she'd arrive at Horizon Tech Solutions exactly 15 minutes early. Not too early that it looked desperate, but early enough to avoid the crowded elevators where she'd have to make small talk. She'd slide into her cubicle on the 3rd floor, power up her computer, and begin her day with the kind of quiet efficiency that rarely drew attention. The marketing department buzzed around her like she was a rock in a stream. People flowed past her desk, chatting about their weekends, their gym routines, their latest vacation plans. Maya would smile politely if someone glanced her way, but mostly she kept her eyes on her screen. It was safer that way. She'd been interning at the company for 6 weeks now, and most people still didn't know her name. When someone needed to get her attention, they'd call her the intern or, "Hey, you there?" She'd started to respond to it automatically, like a reflex she couldn't control. The office itself was the kind of place that looked impressive in photographs. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light. Sleek white desks stretched across open floor plans. There was a meditation room on the 4th floor, a gym in the basement, and a cafeteria that served things like quinoa bowls and cold-pressed juice. Everything about it screamed modern and progressive, but Maya had learned that looking progressive and being progressive were two very different things. She was one of 3 black interns in a program of 20, one of maybe a dozen black employees in a company of over 500. The math wasn't lost on her. Neither was the way people's eyes would flicker with surprise when she spoke up in meetings, like they'd forgotten she could talk. Her supervisor, a woman named Patricia who always wore statement necklaces and talked about her yoga retreats, seemed to mean well. But she had a habit of touching Maya's hair without asking and calling her articulate, in a tone that suggested it was unexpected. Maya had stopped correcting her after the 2nd week. The other interns were mostly graduates from schools like Stanford and Yale. They had parents who worked in tech or finance. They knew how to network, how to laugh at jokes they didn't find funny, how to walk into a room like they owned it. Maya had gone to a state university on scholarships and loans. Her mom was a nurse. Her dad drove a bus. She'd been the first person in her family to work in an office where people had titles like Senior Vice President of Digital Strategy. During lunch, while the other interns gathered in clusters around the cafeteria tables, Maya would take her sandwich and retreat to the lobby. The massive space on the ground floor had become her sanctuary. It was public enough that no one questioned why she was there, but busy enough that she could blend into the background. She'd found her spot in the 2nd week. A leather chair tucked into a corner near a potted plant that was probably fake but looked real enough. From there, she could watch the flow of people coming and going without being watched herself. Delivery drivers hustling through with packages. Employees rushing back from lunch meetings. Important-looking people in expensive suits heading to the elevators. Maya would pull out her tablet and review whatever project she was working on. Social media analytics mostly, tracking engagement rates and click-throughs for the company's various campaigns. It was mindless work that any computer could probably do better, but she attacked it with the focus of someone defusing a bomb. If she did everything perfectly, maybe they'd notice her for the right reasons. Her natural hair had been a source of anxiety since day 1. She'd worn it in braids to the interview, but on her first day, she'd noticed that every black woman in the office wore their hair straight or pulled back tight, so she'd started straightening hers too, flat ironing it every morning until it lay smooth against her head. Then she'd pull it into a low bun that felt like it was giving her a headache by noon. Her mom had noticed during their weekly video call. "Baby, why you doing that to your hair?" She'd asked, her face creased with concern on the phone screen. "It's more professional, Mom," Maya had said, not meeting her eyes through the camera. Her mom had gone quiet for a moment. Then she'd said, "Professional for who?" Maya hadn't had an answer for that. The thing was, she actually liked the work. When she let herself think about it, buried under all the anxiety and self-consciousness, she found the marketing strategy fascinating. She had ideas, good ones, about how the company could reach younger audiences or make their campaigns feel more authentic. But in meetings, when she'd start to raise her hand, something would freeze in her chest. She'd look around at all the confident faces, all the people who seemed so certain of their right to speak, and her hand would slowly lower back to her lap. Once, she'd sent her supervisor a detailed email with suggestions for their next campaign. Patricia had responded with great thoughts, and then used two of Maya's ideas in the next presentation without crediting her. When Maya had gently mentioned it later, Patricia had looked confused. "Oh, I thought those were from the brainstorming session. You should speak up more in meetings so we know what you're contributing." After that, Maya had stopped sending suggestions. On this particular Tuesday, the air conditioning in the building was fighting a losing battle against the summer heat. Maya had finished her sandwich and was sipping lukewarm coffee, trying to focus on a spreadsheet of Instagram engagement metrics. The numbers blurred together after a while. Likes, shares, comments. Sometimes she wondered if any of it really mattered. The lobby was busy today. A group of men in suits clustered near the elevator bank, their laughter echoing off the marble floors. A woman in heels click-clacked past, talking urgently into her phone. A maintenance worker pushed a cart loaded with cleaning supplies. The receptionist, a blonde woman named Kelly who always had perfect lipstick, answered the phone with the same cheerful greeting she'd probably said 1,000 times that week. Maya let it all wash over her, the familiar soundtrack of a workplace where she existed but didn't quite belong. That's when she noticed the older woman. She appeared near the reception desk, moving with the careful steps of someone who wasn't quite sure where they were going. She looked to be in her 70s maybe, with silver hair cut in a neat bob. She wore a navy blue suit that looked expensive and carried a leather briefcase that had the worn patina of something well-used and well-loved. But it was her face that caught Maya's attention. The confusion there, the frustration starting to build in the tightness around her eyes. The woman was trying to get Kelly's attention, but Kelly was on the phone, holding up one finger in the universal gesture of just a minute. The older woman waited, then tried again, this time reaching out to tap the desk. Kelly finished her call and looked up with her professional smile. "How can I help you?" she asked, her voice carrying across the lobby. The older woman opened her mouth, but instead of speaking, she began moving her hands. Quick, deliberate gestures that Maya recognized immediately. She was signing. Kelly's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, I don't... Can you speak?" She said it louder, like volume would somehow bridge the gap. The woman shook her head, frustrated now, and signed more emphatically. She pointed to her ear and shook her head. Then she made a writing gesture. Kelly looked around helplessly. "Does anyone here know sign language?" She called out to no one in particular. A few people glanced over but kept walking. Everyone was busy. Everyone had somewhere else to be. Maya felt her stomach twist. She knew that feeling. That desperate attempt to communicate while people looked through you like you were invisible. Her grandmother had been deaf. Grammy Ruth, who'd lost her hearing to meningitis when she was 45. Maya had been 7 when Grammy moved in with them, and she'd spent the next 6 years learning to sign. Not perfectly, not fluently like a real interpreter, but enough. Enough to tell Grammy about her day at school. Enough to make her laugh. Enough to say "I love you" in a way that didn't need sound. Grammy had died when Maya was 13, and she hadn't used sign language much since then. Sometimes she'd practice in her room just to keep the memory alive, but it had gotten rusty. Still, watching this woman struggle, she felt the old gestures stirring in her muscle memory. Maya looked down at her tablet. This wasn't her problem. She was just an intern. She should stay in her corner, stay invisible, stay safe. Kelly had given up and gone back to answering phones. The older woman stood there looking lost in the middle of the busy lobby. People flowed around her like she was an obstacle to navigate. Not a person who needed help. Maya's grandmother used to tell her stories about the times people treated her like she was stupid because she couldn't hear. How they'd talk over her, about her, like she wasn't even there. Grammy would sign those stories with hands that trembled with old anger, old hurt. Maya set down her tablet. Her hands were shaking as she stood up. This was stupid. She was going to make a fool of herself. Her signing was probably terrible now. She should sit back down. But her feet were already moving. She crossed the lobby slowly, her heart hammering so hard she was sure people could hear it. The older woman had turned away from the desk now, looking around the space with increasing distress. Maya approached from the side, careful not to startle her. When she was close enough, she raised her hand and waved slightly, just enough to catch the woman's attention. The woman turned, and Maya took a breath. Then she signed, her hands clumsy but sincere. "Hello, can I help you?" The transformation on the woman's face was immediate. Her eyes widened, then filled with relief so profound it made Maya's throat tight. She began signing back, quickly at first, then slower when she realized Maya was struggling to keep up. "Thank you," the woman signed. "I have a meeting. I can't find the room." Maya felt a rush of gratitude that she'd understood it. She signed back, "What floor? What room?" As they communicated, Maya became aware of something. The lobby hadn't gotten quieter, but it felt like it had. Some part of her registered that people were glancing over, that this interaction was drawing attention in a way that made her instincts scream to retreat. But the woman in front of her was smiling now, the stress melting from her features, and that mattered more. The woman signed that she was looking for the 15th floor, the executive boardroom. She spelled out her name slowly, Margaretchen. She explained that her interpreter had canceled at the last minute, and she'd thought she could manage, but the building was bigger than she'd expected. Maya nodded, then gestured toward the elevators. "I'll take you," she signed, hoping she'd gotten the phrase right. The relief on the woman's face was answer enough. As they walked across the lobby together, Maya felt exposed in a way she hadn't since her first day. People were watching. Of course they were watching. The shy intern who never spoke was suddenly center stage, having a whole conversation in sign language with a stranger. But when she glanced at the woman beside her, saw the grateful smile, felt the gentle touch on her arm that said thank you in a language beyond words, the anxiety faded just a little. They reached the elevator, and Maya pressed the button for the 15th floor. As they rode up in silence, the woman began signing again. She told Maya about her granddaughter, about how she'd been teaching her to sign. She asked about Maya's family, and Maya found herself sharing about Grammy Ruth, about how she'd learned to sign so they could talk about everything and nothing. The woman's eyes crinkled with understanding. She signed something that Maya had to ask her to repeat. Then she got it. "Your grandmother would be proud of you." Maya felt her eyes start to burn and blinked quickly. The elevator chimed. 15th floor, executive territory. Maya had never been up here before. The carpet was thicker, the art on the walls more expensive. Everything whispered, "Important people only." She walked the woman down the hall to the boardroom, checking the number twice to make sure she had it right. When they reached the heavy wooden door, she knocked once, then helped get the woman settled. The woman squeezed Maya's hand, signed thank you one more time, and then something else that made Maya pause. "You have a kind heart. Don't let this place change that." Before Maya could respond, before she could even process what that meant, someone was calling the woman into the meeting. Maya slipped out quickly, her face burning, and hurried back to the elevator. It wasn't until she was back at her desk, staring at her spreadsheet with unseeing eyes, that she let herself breathe. She'd actually done it. She'd helped someone. For maybe the first time since starting this internship, she'd been visible for something good. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that someone else had seen the whole thing. Someone who'd been standing in the executive hallway, partially hidden behind a marble column, who'd watched every gesture, every sign, every moment of genuine kindness between two people who'd found a way to communicate across silence. Someone who was about to change everything. Maya couldn't focus for the rest of the afternoon. Her hands kept trembling slightly as she typed, and she had to redo the same data entry 3 times because she kept making mistakes. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the woman's face. That look of relief when someone finally understood her. It reminded her so much of Grammy Ruth. All those times her grandmother would come home from the grocery store or the bank, frustrated and tired from trying to communicate with people who didn't have the patience to understand. Grammy would sit at the kitchen table and Maya would make her tea, and they'd talk with their hands about how exhausting it was to exist in a world that wasn't built for you. "You okay?" Maya jumped. Her desk neighbor, a guy named Trevor who was always asking to borrow her stapler, was looking at her with concern. "Yeah, I'm fine," she said quickly, turning back to her screen. "I saw you in the lobby earlier. That was pretty cool what you did." Maya felt her face heat up. "It was nothing. Just helping someone find a room." Trevor shrugged. "Still cool." "I wouldn't have known what to do." He went back to his own computer and Maya exhaled slowly. The thing was, it hadn't felt like nothing. For those few minutes in the lobby and the elevator, she'd felt useful. It's like she had something to offer beyond color-coded spreadsheets and engagement metrics. Like she was more than just the quiet intern everyone forgot about. But now, Sitting back in her cubicle with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the sound of keyboards clicking all around her, that feeling was already starting to fade. She was back to being invisible, and maybe that was safer anyway. The rest of the week passed in its usual blur. Maya arrived early, kept her head down, ate lunch alone in her corner of the lobby. She didn't see the older woman again, and after a few days, the whole encounter started to feel like something she'd imagined. Friday afternoon, Patricia stopped by her desk with a stack of printouts. "Maya, I need you to organize these by date and then scan them into the shared drive. Should take you a few hours." Maya looked at the stack. It was busy work, the kind of thing that should have been digitized years ago. "Sure, no problem." Patricia smiled, already walking away. "You're such a team player. That's what I wrote in your mid-internship review, by the way. Very dependable." Dependable. Maya turned the word over in her mind as she started sorting papers. It wasn't exactly inspiring. It was the kind of thing you said about a stapler, but she supposed it was better than nothing. She was halfway through scanning when her computer pinged with an email notification. She glanced at it, expecting another automated message about office recycling policies or upcoming diversity training that never seemed to change anything. But the sender's name made her freeze. Richard Hoffman, CEO, Horizon Tech Solutions. Her mouth went dry. CEOs didn't email interns. They probably didn't even know interns existed. She stared at the unread message for a full 30 seconds before she finally clicked it open. The subject line read, "Meeting request." The body of the email was short. "Ms. Thompson, please come to my office Monday morning at 10 a.m. This is regarding an important matter. Please confirm receipt of this message. Richard Hoffman." Maya read it 3 times. Then she read it again. Her heart was pounding so hard she felt dizzy. What had she done? She ran through every interaction she'd had over the past 6 weeks, searching for the mistake. Had she used the company printer for personal stuff? Had she accidentally deleted something important? Had someone complained about her? The woman. It had to be about the woman from Tuesday. Maya's hands were shaking as she typed out a response. "Confirmed. I'll be there at 10 a.m., thank you." She hit send before she could overthink it, then immediately wanted to take it back. Should she have said something more? Was "thank you" weird in this context? "You look like you've seen a ghost." Trevor was peering over the cubicle wall again. "I just got an email from the CEO, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. Trevor's eyebrows shot up. "Hoffman, what did you do?" "I don't know. He wants to see me Monday morning." "Whoa." Trevor let out a low whistle. "That's either really good or really bad. There's no in-between with CEO meetings." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Thanks, that helps a lot. Sorry. I'm sure it's fine. Maybe you're getting a project or something." But Trevor didn't sound convinced. Maya spent the rest of Friday in a fog of anxiety. She finished scanning the documents, sent her usual end-of-day report to Patricia, and left exactly at 5 o'clock. The whole train ride home, she kept checking her phone, half expecting another email telling her she was fired or that Monday's meeting was canceled or that it had all been a mistake. That weekend was torture. She tried to distract herself with everything she could think of. She deep-cleaned her apartment. She called her mom but didn't mention the meeting because she didn't want to worry her. She went for a long walk in the park and barely noticed where she was going. Sunday night, she stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to wear. What did you wear to a meeting with a CEO? Especially when you had no idea if you were about to be praised or fired or something in between. She settled on black pants and a blue blouse that her mom had bought her for graduation. Professional but not trying too hard. She laid out the outfit on her chair, set 3 alarms on her phone, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling for hours before finally falling into restless sleep. Monday morning arrived too quickly and too slowly at the same time. Maya got to the office at 8:30, a full hour and a half before her meeting. She couldn't sit still at her desk, so she went to the bathroom 4 times. She got coffee but couldn't drink it. She opened her email and stared at the same message without reading it. At 9:45, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her portfolio, the one she'd brought to her interview that had her resume and some writing samples she'd never shown anyone. She had no idea if she'd need it, but carrying it made her feel slightly more professional, and slightly less like she might throw up. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like it took an hour. When the doors opened, she stepped out onto carpet so thick her footsteps made no sound. The hallway was quiet in a way that felt expensive. Original art on the walls, real plants, not the fake ones from the lobby. A woman sat at a desk outside a set of frosted glass doors. She looked up and smiled when Maya approached. "You must be Maya Thompson. Mr. Hoffman is expecting you. Go right in." Maya's hand trembled as she reached for the door handle. This was it. Whatever this was, it was about to happen. She pushed open the door. The office was bigger than her entire apartment. Windows along one wall overlooked the city. There were bookshelves lined with actual books, not just for show. A sitting area with leather chairs. And behind a massive wooden desk sat Richard Hoffman. He was younger than she'd expected. Early 50s maybe, with gray starting to show at his temples. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no tie. When Maya entered, he immediately stood up, which surprised her so much she almost stopped walking. "Miss Thompson," he said, coming around the desk with his hand extended. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Maya shook his hand, trying not to notice how clammy her own palm was. She sat in one of the chairs facing his desk and gripped her portfolio like a life preserver. Richard sat back down and leaned forward, his expression warm, but serious. "I'm sure you're wondering why you're here." "Yes, sir," Maya managed. "First, let me put your mind at ease. You're not in any trouble. In fact, quite the opposite." He paused, studying her face. "Do you remember helping someone in the lobby last Tuesday? An older woman who was having trouble at the reception desk?" Maya nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. That woman was Margaret Chen. She's the founder of Chen Enterprises and one of our most important board members. She's also one of the most influential people in this industry." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Oh no, she'd bothered someone important. She'd probably broken some kind of protocol by approaching a board member without permission. But Richard was smiling now. "Margaret called me Tuesday night. She wanted to tell me about the kindness a young intern showed her when no one else in this building bothered to help. She said you communicated with her in sign language, escorted her to her meeting, and made her feel welcome in a place where she'd been completely ignored by everyone else." Maya blinked. She needed help?" "Exactly," Richard said, leaning back in his chair. "You saw someone who needed help and you helped them. Do you know how many people walked past Margaret that day? How many employees of this company? This supposedly progressive, inclusive company couldn't be bothered to stop." Maya didn't know what to say to that. "Margaret was actually conducting an experiment," Richard continued. "She does this at companies she invests in. She wants to see how they treat people when they think no one important is watching. It tells her a lot about the real culture of a place, not just what's in the mission statement." "I didn't know," Maya said quietly. "I wasn't trying to—" "I just saw her struggling, and my grandmother was deaf, so I learned to sign when I was little, and I thought maybe I could help." Richard nodded slowly. "That's what makes it meaningful. You weren't performing for anyone. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You just saw another human being who needed something you could give." He stood up and walked over to the windows, looking out at the city. Maya sat in silence, not sure if she was supposed to say something. "I've been the CEO of this company for 8 years," Richard said, his back still to her. "We've won awards for our workplace culture. We have diversity initiatives and inclusion training and all the right policies on paper. But Margaret's little test revealed something I've been suspecting for a while. We're not as good as we think we are." He turned back to face her. "After Margaret called me, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I started actually looking at what happens in this building every day. Who speaks up in meetings and who stays quiet. Who gets credit for ideas and who gets overlooked. Who feels comfortable being themselves and who doesn't." Maya's throat felt tight. She thought about all the times she'd had an idea and stayed silent. All the times she'd made herself small. "I pulled your file," Richard said, walking back to his desk and picking up a folder. "Your work is excellent, Maya. Your analytics reports are detailed and insightful. You've caught several errors that your supervisor missed. And yet, according to Patricia, you barely speak in meetings. You eat lunch alone. You've never volunteered for any team projects." He looked at her directly now. "I want to know why someone with your capabilities feels the need to make herself invisible." The question hung in the air between them. Maya could feel her heart racing. This was it. She could give the safe answer, the one that wouldn't rock the boat. She could say she was just shy, just needed to work on her confidence, just getting used to corporate culture, or she could tell the truth. She thought about Grammy Ruth, who never backed down from the truth even when it was uncomfortable. She thought about the older woman in the lobby, Margaret Chen, who'd probably faced 1,000 obstacles in her career and kept going anyway. Maya took a breath. "Because I'm scared," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'm scared of saying the wrong thing or being too loud or not fitting in. I'm one of 3 black interns here, and I feel like I'm representing everyone who looks like me every time I open my mouth. If I make a mistake, it's not just Maya who messed up. It's proof that maybe they shouldn't have hired someone like me in the first place." Richard's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. Maya kept going, the words coming faster now. "People touch my hair without asking. They tell me I'm articulate like it's surprising. They use my ideas without crediting me and then tell me I should speak up more. I changed my whole appearance because I noticed that every black woman here straightens her hair, and I thought maybe that's what I needed to do to be taken seriously." She paused, suddenly aware that she'd just unloaded all of this on the CEO of the company. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "No," Richard said firmly. "Don't apologize. Thank you for trusting me with that." He sat down heavily in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I won't pretend to fully understand what that's like. I can't. But I can tell you that really hearing it, makes it clear that we have serious problems to fix." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "Here's what I want to propose," Richard said. "But I need you to think about it carefully before you answer because it's going to require you to do something difficult." Maya waited. "I want to offer you a position, starting after you graduate. Not just any position. I'm launching a new initiative focused on accessibility and inclusion, and I want you to help lead it. Margaret has agreed to be personally involved. We need people who understand these issues from the inside, not just consultants who come in and give presentations and leave." Maya's mind was spinning. A real job, a leadership position, but Richard wasn't finished. "There's one condition, and it's significant. I want you to share your story at our quarterly all-hands meeting next month, in front of the entire company. I want you to talk about what happened with Margaret, but also about your experience here as an intern. The real experience, not the sanitized version." Maya felt her chest tighten, speaking in front of the whole company. 800 people. Everyone who'd ever overlooked her or called her the intern or touched her hair without permission. "I know it's asking a lot," Richard said gently. "And if you say no, I'll understand. But Maya, people need to hear this. They need to understand that inclusion isn't just about having the right numbers on paper. It's about creating a place where someone like you doesn't have to hide who they are just to feel safe." Maya looked down at her hands. They were shaking again, but not from fear this time. It was something else. Something that felt like possibility. She thought about the woman in the lobby, about that moment of connection across silence. She thought about all the other people in this building who might be making themselves small, might be hiding, might be waiting for permission to be seen. She looked up at Richard. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." Maya walked out of Richard Hoffman's office feeling like she was floating and drowning at the same time. Her legs carried her to the elevator on autopilot, and she pressed the button for the 3rd floor without really thinking about it. The doors closed, and suddenly she was alone with what she'd just agreed to do, speak in front of 800 people. Tell them everything. Make herself the most visible she'd ever been. What had she been thinking? The elevator dinged, and she stepped out into the familiar chaos of the marketing department. Everything looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago, but somehow different. Like she was seeing it all through new eyes. Trevor practically jumped out of his chair when he saw her. "Well, what happened? Are you fired? Are you getting promoted? Did he offer you a job with the CIA? I've been going crazy over here." Maya slid into her chair, still feeling disconnected from reality. "He offered me a job. A real one after graduation." Trevor's jaw dropped. "Are you serious? Doing what?" "Working on accessibility and inclusion initiatives. With one of the board members. That's incredible." Trevor was grinning like he'd won the lottery himself. "See, I told you it wasn't bad news. Man, the rest of us are going to look so boring on our resumes. Completed assigned tasks and filed things properly. Meanwhile, you're out here changing the company." Maya managed a weak smile. She wanted to feel excited, but all she could think about was the meeting. Standing up in front of everyone. Being really looked at by every person who'd ever ignored her. "There's a catch, though," she said quietly. "I have to give a presentation at the all-hands meeting. About what happened with the woman in the lobby and about being an intern here." Trevor's excitement dimmed a little. "Oh, that's Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, but you're going to do it, right? Maya nodded slowly. I already said yes. I can't back out now. The truth was she wanted to back out desperately. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to run, to hide, to find a way to take it all back. But something else, something quieter but stronger, was telling her she had to do this. Not just for herself, but for every person who'd ever felt invisible in a place like this. The rest of the day was a blur. Patricia stopped by her desk around 3 o'clock with her usual stack of tasks, but this time Maya barely heard her. She kept thinking about what she'd say, how she'd say it, whether anyone would actually listen or if they'd just see her as a complainer. When 5 o'clock finally came, Maya packed up her things and headed for the exit. She was so lost in thought that she almost walked straight into someone in the lobby. Oh, I'm so sorry, She looked up and stopped mid-sentence. It was Margaret Chen, the woman from last Tuesday. She was standing near the elevators with her leather briefcase, and when she saw Maya, her whole face lit up. She immediately started signing, and Maya's rusty skills scrambled to keep up. I was hoping I'd see you, Margaret signed. I wanted to thank you properly, Maya signed back. You don't need to thank me. I was just helping. Margaret shook her head, smiling. It was more than that. You saw me when everyone else looked right through me. She paused, then signed. Richard told me about the meeting. About what you agreed to do. Maya felt her face heat up. I'm terrified, she signed honestly. Good, Margaret signed back. That means it matters to you. She switched to fingerspelling something, going slowly so Maya could follow. Courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Then Margaret reached into her briefcase and pulled out a business card. She pressed it into Maya's hand and signed, Call me if you need to talk, before the meeting or after, any time. Maya looked down at the card. It had Margaret's name embossed in gold, along with several phone numbers and an email address. She looked back up, and Margaret was smiling at her with such warmth that Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Maya signed. Margaret squeezed her hand once, then headed toward the parking garage. Maya stood in the lobby, holding the business card like it was something precious, until the evening security guard asked if she was okay. That night, Maya sat on her couch with her laptop open, trying to figure out what she was going to say. She'd started and deleted at least 15 different opening lines. Everything sounded either too casual or too formal, too angry or too apologetic. How did you tell a room full of people that their workplace had been slowly crushing you without making it sound like you were attacking them? Her phone rang. It was her mom. Hey, baby. Just checking in. How was your day? Maya considered lying. She considered saying it was fine, just another boring Monday. But she was so tired of hiding. Mom, something happened today. And then, to her surprise, everything came spilling out. The meeting with the CEO, the job offer, the presentation she had to give. All of it. Her mom was quiet for a long moment after she finished. Then she said, Baby, I'm so proud of you. I haven't done anything yet, Maya said. I might completely mess it up. You stood up in that man's office and told him the truth. That's not nothing. That's everything. Her mom's voice got softer. Your Grammy Ruth would be so proud too. You know that, right? Maya wiped at her eyes. I keep thinking about her. About how she never let anyone make her feel small even when they tried. That's because she had you, her mom said. You made her feel seen. That's what you did for that woman last week. And that's what you're going to do with this presentation. You're going to make people feel seen. After they hung up, Maya sat with those words for a while. Make people feel seen. Maybe that's what this was really about. Not just telling her own story, but opening the door for other people to tell theirs. She started typing again, and this time, the words came easier. The next few weeks were strange. Maya went to work every day, did her regular intern tasks, but everything felt different now. People knew something had happened, though they didn't know exactly what. Word had gotten around that she'd had a meeting with the CEO, and suddenly people who'd never talked to her before were stopping by her desk. I heard you're working on some special project, one woman from accounting said, leaning against Maya's cubicle wall. That's so cool. What's it about? Maya kept her answers vague. Just some initiative stuff. Nothing major yet, but it was major. In her mind, it was massive and terrifying and getting closer every single day. Patricia pulled her aside one morning. her expression odd. "I heard from upstairs that you're going to be speaking at the all-hands meeting. Is that true?" Maya nodded. "Yes, about accessibility and inclusion." Patricia's smile looked forced. "That's wonderful. I'm so glad one of our interns is getting this opportunity. It really shows our commitment to diversity." Maya just nodded again, not trusting herself to say what she was really thinking, that if the company was truly committed to diversity, maybe someone would have helped Margaret that day besides the intern everyone forgot about. 2 weeks before the meeting, Richard's assistant emailed Maya asking if she wanted to practice her presentation in the actual auditorium where it would happen. Maya said yes, even though the thought made her want to throw up. The auditorium was on the second floor, a space she'd never had reason to visit before. It was huge. Rows and rows of seats rising up toward the back. A massive screen behind the stage. Professional lighting. This was where important announcements were made, where quarterly results were shared, where the executives stood and talked about the future of the company. And in 3 weeks, Maya would be standing on that stage. She walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. When she climbed the stairs to the stage, her hands were shaking. She stood behind the podium and looked out at all those empty seats. 800 people would be sitting there. 800 pairs of eyes all looking at her. Her throat closed up. She couldn't do this. There was no way she could do this. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Margaret. "How's the preparation going? Remember, you're not alone in this." Maya took a deep breath and typed back, "Standing on the stage right now. It's bigger than I thought." Margaret's response came quickly. "The stage isn't what matters. Your voice is, and your voice is strong enough to fill any space." Maya read the message twice, then looked back out at the empty auditorium. She thought about all the times she'd made herself small, all the times she'd swallowed words that needed to be said. She thought about Grammy Ruth, who'd never had the chance to share her story in a place like this. She opened the Notes app on her phone, where she'd been working on her speech. She'd rewritten it so many times that she'd lost count, but she was finally getting close to something that felt true. She started reading it out loud, her voice tiny in the huge space at first. But as she kept going, as she got to the parts about feeling invisible and changing herself to fit in, and finally finding the courage to help someone who needed it, her voice grew stronger. When she finished, she stood in the silence for a moment. Then she walked off the stage, down the aisle, and out of the auditorium. She could do this. She had to do this. The week before the meeting, something unexpected happened. Maya was in the break room making coffee when 2 other interns came in. She recognized them vaguely from the program orientation, but had never really talked to them. One was a woman named Priya who always wore beautiful scarves. The other was a guy named David, who'd transferred from the finance department. They looked nervous, glancing at each other before Priya spoke up. "Hey, Maya, can we talk to you for a second?" Maya nodded, stirring sugar into her coffee. "We heard you're doing a presentation at the All Hands," David said, "about inclusion and stuff. And we were wondering, is it true that you talked about like real problems? Like things that actually happen here?" Maya studied their faces. They both looked hopeful and scared at the same time. "Yeah," she said carefully. "I'm planning to talk about my real experience." Priya and David exchanged another look. Then Priya said, Could you maybe talk about the fact that there's no prayer room for Muslims? I've been doing my prayers in the bathroom stall and it's really hard. I mentioned it to HR once and they said they'd look into it, but that was 3 months ago. And could you mention that the company health insurance doesn't cover therapy?" David added quickly. "They talk about mental health awareness, but then they don't actually make it affordable to get help. I've been dealing with anxiety and I can't afford treatment." Maya looked at them, these 2 people she'd barely noticed before, and realized they'd been invisible too, just in different ways. "Yes," she said. "I'll include that. Both of those things." Over the next few days, more people approached her, quietly, in corners when no one else was around. An older guy from IT who had a disability and struggled with the building's accessibility. A woman from sales who was the only parent on her team and felt guilty every time she had to leave for her kid's school event. A man from operations who'd been documenting discriminatory comments from his manager for months with no response from HR. They all had stories. They'd all been invisible in their own ways. Maya added them all to her presentation, not with names but with their experiences. The speech grew longer, more detailed, more real, and scarier. 3 days before the meeting, Patricia called her into a small conference room. She closed the door and sat down across from Maya with a serious expression. "Maya, I need to talk to you about this presentation." Maya's stomach dropped. "Okay. I've heard through the grapevine that you're planning to discuss some sensitive topics, and I just want to make sure you understand that this is a big opportunity for you. You don't want to come across as ungrateful or negative." Maya felt something hot and sharp rise in her chest. "I'm not being negative. I'm being honest," Patricia sighed. "I understand that, but there's a way to talk about these things that's constructive. You don't want people to think you're just complaining." "What if I am complaining?" Maya said, surprised by her own boldness. "What if there are things worth complaining about?" Patricia looked uncomfortable. "All I'm saying is be careful. You have a great future here if you play your cards right. Don't burn bridges before you've even built them." Maya left that meeting feeling shaky but also strangely clearer. This was exactly why the presentation mattered. Because people like Patricia wanted everything to look good on the surface, even if it meant people suffered in silence underneath. The night before the all-hands meeting, Maya barely slept. She ran through her speech in her head over and over, changing words, adding things, taking things out. At 2 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and just sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, reading through it one more time. Her phone buzzed. A text from Margaret, even though it was the middle of the night. "Can't sleep either. Pre-speech jitters are normal. You're going to be amazing tomorrow. I'll be in the front row." Maya smiled and typed back, "Thank you for everything." "Thank you," Margaret replied. "You're changing things. That's never easy, but it's always worth it." Maya closed her laptop and went to stand by her window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there were all the people who'd shared their stories with her. All the invisible people who were counting on her to make them seen. She could do this. She would do this. Tomorrow she would step into the light and bring everyone else with her. The morning of the all-hands meeting, Maya woke up at 5:30, even though her alarm wasn't set until 6. Her heart was already racing, and for a moment she just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering if it was too late to call in sick. But she'd made a promise. To Richard. To Margaret. To all those people who'd shared their stories with her in quiet corners and empty hallways. To herself. She got up and went through her morning routine like she was preparing for battle. Shower, coffee, the blue dress she'd bought specifically for today because it made her feel strong. She left her hair natural for the first time since starting the internship, pulling it back into a puff that felt like a small act of rebellion. Looking at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the person staring back. This wasn't the Maya who'd arrived 12 weeks ago, trying to disappear into the walls. This was someone different. Someone scared but standing up anyway. The train ride to work felt longer than usual. Maya clutched her bag with the printed notes inside, even though she'd memorized every word. Around her, people scrolled through their phones, sipped coffee, existed in their own worlds. None of them knew that in a few hours she'd be standing in front of 800 people, saying things that could change everything or ruin everything. When she walked into the building, the lobby was already busier than normal. The all-hands meeting started at 10, and people were arriving early to get good seats. Maya saw clusters of employees chatting, laughing, completely relaxed. She envied them. She went straight to her desk, too nervous to eat the bagel she'd brought. Trevor was already there, and he immediately spun around in his chair when he saw her. "Today's the day. How are you feeling?" "Like I might throw up," Maya admitted. "You're going to crush it. I'm sitting in the front section, so you'll see at least one friendly face." He grinned. "Plus, I told everyone on our floor to actually pay attention. No checking phones during your part." Maya managed to smile. "Thanks, Trevor." At 9:30, Richard's assistant came to get her. "Mr. Hoffman wants to see you before the meeting, just to check in." Maya followed her to the executive floor, her stomach doing flips the entire elevator ride. When she entered Richard's office, she found him standing by the window, and he turned when he heard her come in. "Maya, how are you holding up?" "Nervous," she said honestly. He nodded. "That's normal. I've been doing these meetings for 8 years and I still get butterflies." He walked over and sat in one of the leather chairs, gesturing for her to sit too. "I want you to know something before you go out there. What you're about to do is brave. Some people might not want to hear it. Some people might get defensive. But that doesn't make it less important." Maya twisted her hands in her lap. What if I mess up? What if I forget what I want to say, or I start crying, or people think I'm just complaining? Then you'll be human, Richard said simply. Maya, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be honest. That's all. The rest will take care of itself. He stood up and straightened his tie. Margaret's already in the auditorium. Front row, just like she promised. And I'll be up there with you, introducing your segment. You won't be alone. They walked down together, not saying much. Maya could hear the buzz of conversation growing louder as they approached the auditorium. When they reached the backstage entrance, Richard squeezed her shoulder once. You've got this. Then he walked out onto the stage, and the room quieted down. Maya stood in the wings, hidden from view, listening as Richard welcomed everyone and went through the usual quarterly updates. Revenue numbers, new product launches, client acquisitions, the normal stuff that made people zone out and check their emails, but then his tone shifted. Before we wrap up today, I want to talk about something different, something that's been on my mind for a while now, and something that was brought into sharp focus for me a few weeks ago. Maya felt her pulse quicken. We talk a lot in this company about our values, about innovation and excellence and teamwork, but there's one value that I think we've been paying lip service to without really understanding what it means. Inclusion. The room was completely silent now. Maya could hear the air conditioning humming. A few weeks ago, one of our board members, Margaret Chen, came to this building for a meeting. Margaret is deaf, and her interpreter had canceled last minute. She went to our reception desk for help, and do you know what happened? Richard paused, letting the question hang in the air. Nothing. Nobody helped her. People walked right past her. Our receptionist didn't know what to do. In a building full of 500 employees with all our talk about inclusivity and respect, not one person stopped to help. Except one. Maya's hands were shaking now. One person saw Margaret struggling and didn't just walk past. This person took the time to communicate with her in sign language, to escort her to her meeting, to make her feel like she mattered. And that person was a 22-year-old intern who'd been with us for less than 2 months. Maya heard murmuring in the audience now, people shifting in their seats. I asked myself, how is it possible that an intern saw what hundreds of experienced professionals missed? And the answer made me uncomfortable. It's because she knows what it's like to be invisible. She knows what it's like to be overlooked. She knows because it happens to her here every single day. Richard turned toward the wings where Maya was standing. I'd like to invite that intern to come out here and share her story with all of you. Please welcome Maya Thompson. This was it. No turning back now. Maya took a breath and stepped out onto the stage.